There's a moment that comes for everyone. Maybe it comes for a business. Maybe it comes for a marriage. Maybe it comes for your health, your family, your sense of who you are. Maybe it comes as a slow erosion, a little lost here, a little conceited there, until one morning you wake up and realize you're standing on the last piece of ground you have left. And in that moment, you have exactly two options. You perish or you make your stand. Most people, when they imagine that moment, imagine themselves rising to it, drawing the line, finding something inside themselves they didn't know was there. They picture it as a scene from a film. The moment the music swells, the moment the broken warrior picks up the sword one last time. What they don't picture is how unnecessary it should have been. How much ground they gave away quietly, without a fight, long before the final stand became the only option left. That's what this is about. Not the final stand itself, but what you do before it. I want you to understand something that most people spend their whole lives refusing to accept. The stand is coming. I don't mean that as a threat. I mean it the way a navigator means it when he reads the weather, as information you need, whether it's comfortable or not. Life does not reward those who believe conflict can be permanently avoided. It does not exempt anyone from the moment of reckoning. The only question it asks, the only question that matters, is what kind of shape will you be in when it arrives? Because it will arrive. The thing you built will be threatened. The people you love will need you to be immovable. The life you chose will, at some point, require you to defend it. Against circumstance, against people who want what you have, against the version of yourself that wants to quit. You don't get to opt out of that moment. You only get to choose whether you've prepared for it. And here's the brutal truth. Preparation doesn't happen at the final stand. That's not when you build strength. That's when you spend it. The work, the real work, happens in the long, ordinary, unglamorous time before anyone's watching, before it's urgent, before the ground is shrinking beneath your feet. The time to go to work is not when you're desperate. The time to go to work is now. Before we talk about the work, we have to talk about what you're working for. Because here's something I've noticed. A lot of people are vaguely motivated to build without being specifically clear about what they're building toward. And vague motivation loses. It always loses. It loses to comfort, to distraction, to the path of least resistance. It loses to the small daily decisions that don't feel like decisions at all. Specific motivation, the kind rooted in something you can name, something you can picture, something you love enough to hurt for, that kind holds. So I want you to actually do this, not as a mental exercise. As a real act of clarity, what are you defending? Is it your family? Not the idea of family, this family. These specific people. The way your kid looks at you. The promise you made. The thing you'd be gutted to lose. Is it something you've built? A business. A body of work? A reputation. Something you bled for that has your name on it. Is it a version of yourself you haven't fully become yet, but you know is possible, and you know is slipping away with every year you don't act? Name it. Get specific. Because the people and circumstances that come for what you have, and they will come, they are not vague. They are specific. They have specific intentions and specific timelines, and they are counting on you remaining comfortable and undefined. Your clarity is your first line of defense. Let me be honest with you, in a way that comfortable thinking doesn't allow. If you have built something worth having, they will come for it. I don't mean this as paranoia. I mean it as physics. Things of value attract pressure. A good life, a strong business, a loving family, a healthy body. These things exist in a world that contains entropy and competition and people who, for whatever reason, want what you have or want you to not have it. This isn't cynicism. The greatest builders in history understood this. The greatest families understood it. The greatest leaders understood it. You do not get to keep what you cannot defend. That is not a law invented by the ruthless. It is a law that simply is, and the ruthless merely understand it earlier than everyone else. And here's what the unprepared don't see coming. It rarely arrives dramatically. It rarely announces itself as the threat it is. It arrives as a slow negotiation of your standards. as a gradual acceptance of something you told yourself you'd never accept, as a relationship that takes more than it gives, a competitor you decide not to take seriously, a health warning you file away for later, a financial pressure you agree to tolerate just a little longer. Each concession seems small, each one is survivable. And then one day you look at what remains and realize the final stand is now. The ground is nearly gone, and you are nowhere near as prepared as you needed to be. This is the pattern. And it is not inevitable, but you have to see it clearly to break it. So what do you actually do? You go to work. Not dramatically. Not in a blaze of sudden resolution that burns out in 2 weeks. You go to work the way people who actually win go to work. Quietly, consistently, before anyone is watching, before it's urgent, before the stakes are visible. This is not motivational in the way people expect motivation to feel. It doesn't feel electric. It doesn't feel cinematic. It feels like showing up when you don't want to. It feels like doing the thing you've been putting off for 6 months, again today, knowing it won't pay off today. It feels like building something that doesn't exist yet and won't exist for a long time and requires you to believe in it anyway. That's the work. And it is the most important thing you will ever do, because every day you go to work before the stand is a day you're not giving ground. Every skill you build, every relationship you strengthen, every decision you make from discipline rather than comfort, that is fortification. That is you making the final stand less final, giving yourself more ground to stand on, more options, more time, more capacity to absorb the blow when it comes and still be standing after. Think about what you want to be able to say when it arrives. When the moment comes that tests everything, what do you want to have done with the time you had before it? What do you want to have built? What do you want to know? Who do you want to have become? Start becoming that now. Not later. Not when things are more certain. Now, I want to talk about what it actually costs to wait. Because most people think waiting is neutral. They think the cost of waiting is that you're just behind. That you can make it up later, catch up, compress the timeline. You can't. Waiting is not neutral. Waiting is a decision to not build, to not strengthen, to not prepare. And while you're making that decision, time is passing. The thing you're not learning, someone else is. The relationship you're not tending is fraying. The body you're not strengthening is aging. The position you're not building is being built against you. The gap doesn't stay the same size while you wait. It grows. And the longer you wait, the worse the terms of the final stand become. More desperate. Fewer options. Less room to maneuver. Less capacity to absorb the hits that are coming. And the cruelest part of it is this. By the time the urgency is undeniable, by the time the situation has become so serious that even the most comfortable and avoidant part of you can't look away if the time you needed most is gone, the person who prepared for 10 years before the moment has options. The person scrambling at the last minute cannot imagine. Not because they are more talented, not because they got a better hand, because they understood earlier that the moment was coming, and they chose to use the time. Use the time. Let me tell you what the final stand actually requires of you. Because I think people misunderstand it. It doesn't require fearlessness. The greatest stands in history were made by people who were terrified. Fear is not the disqualifier. Fear is the proof that something real is at stake. It doesn't require perfection. You don't need to be the ideal version of yourself. You need to be prepared enough, strong enough, clear enough, practiced enough to function under pressure when everything in you wants to fold. What it requires is that you have not wasted the time before it. That's the whole thing. That's the entire ask. Because what breaks people at the final stand is not the stand itself. It's the knowledge that they had time and spent it on comfort. That they saw the threat building and chose not to prepare. That they are fighting on ground they gave away themselves, with tools they never bothered to build, for things they never took the time to clearly want. That knowledge, that it didn't have to be this desperate, is what breaks people. Not the enemy, not the odds, the weight of their own unlived preparation. You do not have to carry that weight. That is a choice you make right now in the ordinary days, before the ground starts shrinking. The final stand is not a failure. Let me be clear about that. Sometimes the stand is simply what life asks of you, and you rise to it because you have prepared and you hold the line, and it is one of the most meaningful things you will ever do. There is something true and ancient about the moment when a person, having done the work, simply refuses to yield on the thing that matters most. But that stand should be made from strength, from preparation, from a life spent building something worth defending and developing the capacity to defend it. The people who make that stand, from strength, from readiness, they almost always hold. The people who make it from desperation, without the preparation, without the foundation, they're not always so fortunate. You get to choose which kind of stand you make, not by controlling when the moment comes, but by controlling what you do between now and then. So go to work, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, because you will never feel ready. Today, right now, in whatever small, unglamorous, unwitnessed way is available to you today. Build the thing, strengthen the relationship, learn the skill, make the hard decision you've been circling for months. Get one day of preparation further down the road than you were yesterday, because the stand is coming, and when it does, you will not wish you had been more comfortable in the time before it. You will only wish you had worked harder. Start now.